Hey everyone, welcome, welcome. I'm in a mountain home, so I'm outside, so hopefully my reception stays strong for this call today. This morning I was looking at the registration list and we have 5,000 health professionals signed up from all over the world. And I found myself wondering, what brought each of you here today? And maybe you had a client who's been stuck in resentment for years and you can feel how much it's weighing on them. Or maybe you've got someone who desperately wants to forgive themselves, but no matter what they try, they can't seem to let go of the shame. Or maybe it's a little more personal than that. Maybe you're carrying something you haven't been able to fully release, and you're hoping today might offer a new way forward for you and your clients. But whatever brought you here, I'm so glad you're here and made the time. And I know Frank's really happy that you're here. So go ahead and drop in the chat where you're joining in from today. Um, Israel, UK, Brazil, Tampa, Florida, Italy. Oh my God. Really appreciate you all being here, many different time zones. So here's what we're going to do today. First, Dr. Frank Anderson is going to share something that can greatly impact the way we think about healing. He's going to show you how forgiveness actually works, and not as a moral obligation or a cognitive exercise, but as something that happens in the nervous system and the energy of the body, even the spiritual dimension of our lives. And here's what I personally appreciate about Frank's approach. It doesn't ask anyone to let harmful people off the hook. It's not about excusing what happened. It's about helping your clients release the burden that they've been carrying so they can move forward with their lives. And second, towards the end, I'll share some information about Frank's new course, New Dimensions of Trauma Healing, Energy, Neuroscience, and Spirituality. But here's my heart on this. I don't want you to think about whether to join the course while Frank is teaching. I just want you to be present, to learn, to take notes, and take in what he's sharing. And then at the end, you find yourself thinking, wow, this really opened up something for me. I want to go deeper. Then we can talk about next steps. But if it doesn't resonate, that's completely okay too. No pressure, no weirdness, no awkwardness. I just want today to be valuable. Um, a few housekeeping uh, tips. If you have questions, just click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you want to come on later on the camera to ask Frank questions, just raise your hand and our team will bring you on. And yes, we're recording everything if you got to go early, and you'll get a replay and slides. Frank is generously offering his slides that Martana will mail you afterwards. So let me tell you a little about Frank, because his story is actually what inspired us to create this program with him.
Hmm.
Dr. Frank Anderson is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist and trauma therapist. He's worked alongside Bessel van der Kolk and Dick Schwartz for years, and he's the author of Transcending Trauma, a book that's helped thousands of therapists work more effectively with complex PTSD. And his most recent book, which I read cover to cover, To Be Love, and it really impacted my own relationship with my father just reading Frank's book. But what I find most compelling about Frank, that he shared with us a few years ago while we recorded him in Boulder, is that he started experiencing something unexpected in one of his therapy sessions. He'd get these impressions, messages, information about his clients that he couldn't have possibly known. And the first time he shared one of these messages, something from a client's deceased husband, he almost didn't do it. He thought, this is going to sound freaking crazy. I don't know if Frank said frickin'. I added that, Frank. Sorry.
No,
Um,
I would say fucking instead of fricking. You're right.
thanks for the correction.
There you
But
go.
but finally, when he said out loud, his client broke down in tears because it was exactly what she needed to hear. And it unlocked grief that she's been carrying for over a decade. And that experience changed everything for Frank. He realized we've been taught to leave spirituality and energy out of the therapy room. But for many of our clients, that's what's the deepest healing actually happens. So Frank spent years learning how to integrate spiritual energy with neuroscience and IF, and it transformed his practice. And today he's going to share that integration with you. Hopefully, you're going to learn practical, grounded ways to help your clients access forgiveness, and not through willpower or cognitive reframing, but through actually releasing what they've been holding in their bodies and their nervous systems and their souls. So, this is real work. It's deeply compassionate, and I think you're going to find it really valuable. Frank, I'm so glad you're here, and the virtual floor is yours. So, thank you,
Thank
man.
you.
I hope what I said was accurate, so please correct me if anything I
Yeah,
said was not.
I always hear these things about me, and I'm like, what's going to be said? What's going to be said? But no, it was all good and all accurate. And Brian, interestingly enough, you reminded me of that experience, of having this client and really hearing voices. I mean, that's what happened in that experience with this client many, many years ago. She came to me because she, had heard through the grapevine that I was a grief expert, which I kind of am secondarily to being a trauma expert, because you kind of can't be a trauma expert without dealing with grief, because all trauma has grief inherently built in. Not all grief has trauma, right? So I kind of became like this ADHD expert and a grief expert as a result of my work in trauma, because ADHD is the same thing. We know cortisol is toxic to certain parts of the brain, and people develop attentional problems with trauma. But yeah, bringing that story back with that client, I was a Harvard science guy through and through. And so to kind of crack open that ceiling, if you will, for me to start accessing all that's outside of all of us and bringing it into the therapy office was a huge risk for me, right? My husband is really the person who introduced me to this world outside of science. A very spiritual, thoughtful, quiet introvert, totally opposite of me. And he really had me read this book, go to this reading, read this book, go to this reading. So it really was just kind of like slowly but surely my life started changing because of opening myself up to all that is outside of us. But to have it show up in the therapy office was really scary for me. And literally heard, tell her this. And I pushed it away. Tell her this, pushed it away. And I was like, shut up. I was kind of, get away from me. Don't do this. I can't do this in therapy. How managed care doesn't allow me to talk to people who have passed. And it was interesting because the reason this came up in some ways is I wanted to get to know her husband better. And she brought in a book and she brought in a watch. And she's like, here is his watch and here's his book. And it was while I was holding his book and looking through pictures that she had that he showed up in this very powerful way, which was learning for me in that way. Like, oh, objects and memories and stories help bring things present to us. And I did. I really took a risk because, Brian, the message was so specific. Like it was clearly nothing that I could have, all the schooling in the world could not have come up with this interpretation or this message. And, it was like, tell her I died the way I wanted to. Boom. She just totally flipped out because she had gone downstairs to get like a drink of water or something in the moment that he passed, right? And she wanted to be with him every single second. And it really profoundly affected her healing journey because she knew him and she got out of her grief and stayed in her love for him in that moment, which was very profound because she's like, oh my goodness, of course, this is who he was. Oh my goodness, of course, in the way that I knew him and loved him, he would have wanted to leave that way under his terms. And it just opened her up around no longer holding the angst and the pain around what she was carrying because her love for him trumped the grief and sorrow for her in that moment. And I could have never in a million years come up with something like that would have caused that kind of profound healing.
It's such an interesting equation to hold on to in
Yeah.
sessions to know that part.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And I will say I've really cultivated my awareness of what is beyond all of us because we're taught from a very young age to push it away, push it away. I think we're all born with this resource and talent. I don't think Frank Anderson is some special guru. I want everybody out there to know that. That is not what I feel. I feel that I've worked hard to cultivate and regain access because I think we all have that access early on. And because we are here in human experience, we're here to have a human experience, we shut off all the ways we have access and know. So for me, the spiritual dimensions of my work and my life is opening myself up again to something that I think I have always had access to, but learned to kind of put a damper on. So I love having this in my life now. When I'm working with a client today, I often, if they close their eyes, I close my eyes and I'll see images and colors and shapes and movement. And often it's relevant to information I receive that's beyond my cognitive brain. And I'm always curious about what does it mean? What is it about? And it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, like a fun journey that I'm on to kind of match the messaging with what's relevant for this client at the time. And I'm never impose anything, Brian. That's another thing I'll say. Never do I impose anything. I'm always curious. I'm seeing a red pitchfork. I'm wondering if this has any relevance to your life at all, right? Boom, another client's like, oh my goodness, my father had schizophrenia, and I totally felt that the devil was possessing him. And this was a person with a very kind of Catholic religious devil God belief system that I don't even hold, right? So I see this image of a pitchfork. It means something to her in a very different way than it would ever mean to me. So I never impose my belief system when I'm working with someone. And I'm always curious about what these messages mean or don't to this person. I've also worked with people who I get a message, but they're not really ready to receive it yet. They're like, no, this doesn't mean anything. No, I don't know what you're talking about. And I say, okay, fine. Because there's the receptivity for us as therapists to be open to this. Many therapists are empaths. Many people here are empathic and highly sensitive. So we have a lot of stuff that we ignore. And for me, part of this course is like how to learn to get comfortable with it, how to feel you have a right and not feel shamed about it, and how to learn that there's science behind some of this stuff, which I think is really cool. I just had the pleasure of spending some time with Dr. Tara Swart, who's in the UK, and she's a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist who had her husband pass of cancer, and it totally changed and transformed her life from a spiritual perspective. And I just love that more and more science people are open to this idea of spirituality and messaging and information beyond our human capacity. I'll talk about this, Brian, and I think we'll be talking about this on one of our calls, honestly, is the difference between soul and self. And this is an expansion of my work, which I'll talk about later, but I have a distinction now, which I didn't before, interestingly enough, the difference between our human self and our soul, and how different aspects of self and soul can hold different dimensions of trauma. And I'll get into that down the road a little bit, but it's an expansion of my work, which I'm super excited about, honestly. Now, if we think about forgiveness, I kind of call it the F word. Always like, am I going to use the F word or not? And I'm like, not the fuck word that we talked about before, but the forgiveness word, because it really does have this similar connotation. Oh, this is a bad word. Oh, we're not supposed to be using this. Forgiveness belongs in the spiritual realms, not in the psychotherapy worlds. You're not supposed to talk about forgiveness. And I really understand some of that. There's so much in culture, in society, in social media that pushes forgiveness prematurely. So I understand the hesitation and the reluctance for therapists or coaches or whatever kind of health worker you are, or for your own personal experience, how forgiveness can has this kind of reputation of being something we need to be careful and guarded and cautious about. So I'm very aware of this. Never, Brian, in a million years did I think I would be talking about forgiveness in my workshops. It was never anything that I put a lot of stock in other than oh my goodness. Now we're going to traumatize me. Now we're going to bring up my trauma history. Because I used to go to, I grew up Catholic and was in conversion therapy as a very young kid and went to confession, right? And this idea of forced, you know, repentance and forgiveness was just so thrust upon me in my own experience. Like, I didn't mean anything to me. It had no weight. Go into this room with a total stranger, make up five sins that you did because you couldn't be honest at all as a kid, for me. And then you get this forgiveness bestowed upon you from this person. Now, I understand those people who are Catholic or Protestant or whatever their religion is, that that is not the way it is for everyone. I totally understand that. I'm talking about my personal experience as a young kid and how forgiveness was introduced to me in a way that didn't resonate and didn't feel authentic for me. So I've always had this cautious, guarded experience around forgiveness. The other thing I'll say, because of my trauma history, was there was a lot of defensiveness and guardedness in my family of origin. So admitting, being the vulnerability of admitting I'm wrong, I'm sorry, was not a part of my culture growing up at all. So I never heard my parents say, I'm wrong, I made a mistake, I'm sorry. And I never learned to have any kind of experience of that. And that is very common for trauma survivors. Okay. One of the hallmark issues of trauma is when the people that harm us don't take responsibility for their actions, we assign responsibility to ourselves. This happens over and over and over again in complex or relational trauma. So I never had parents that took responsibility for what they did. So I never learned how to do that. And I never learned about the value of forgiveness in regards to deepening the authenticity and connection in relationship, because that's what it could do versus it's this scary, awful thing that we have to avoid at all costs, right? Let me put up a couple slides now so we could kind of run through some of this content. And yes, folks, you will all have these slides. I want to just share a little bit around, and I'll talk about my journey, because really my forgiveness journey, I'm going to say, Brian, started with the passing of my father, honestly, because that's where, I was one of these people, folks. I'm a therapy lifer. I'm going to try to change that. I don't think everybody needs to be in therapy for 50 years in order for them to heal their trauma. I've been in therapy for 35 plus years, long, long time. And I've done a ton of healing. And I've always had this like, I felt better. I expanded my life. My view got better. I was happier. A lot of benefits occurred for me as a result of my healing my trauma. And there was always this missing piece, which I never understood until the passing of my father, where I kind of was compelled by forces, honestly, that were way beyond my awareness of offering love and forgiveness to someone who was brutally harmful to me. Before my dad died, like probably 3 months before he died, I just had this idea in my head that I was going to give him a beautiful send off and a beautiful funeral. I had no idea what that was about. It didn't even make any logical sense to me, but I had a, a powerful message that I was going to send him off with honor and love. And at that point, it wasn't like we even had a great relationship, and I didn't understand why I felt the need to do that. But it just was something that was part of my journey. And I was so fortunate to be able to have the experience of mutual love and forgiveness as a gift to me during the passing of my father, the transition for him, that I understand many people don't experience. Some of us are fortunate enough to have those moments of forgiveness with the person. Some people can have that experience of forgiveness while they're not even in interaction with the person. Like you can do forgiving without the person being in front of you or exchanging contact with them. So there's many different ways this can happen privately, in relationship, while they're alive, after they've gone. Forgiveness has a lot of dimensions to it. Now, before we dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about trauma and a little bit about um, resilience, because that's one of the things that I've learned about the building of resilience through forgiveness, interestingly enough. And I don't know that many people put those two topics together, but I certainly have learned to do that. So, oh my goodness, any podcast I ever do, Brian, it's like, what's the definition of trauma? What is trauma? Because it's such a buzzword these days. I kind of say, if you're a baby boomer, and I'm saying that because my damn kids told me that I am, I'm like the last 2 years of a baby boomer. So I'm a baby boomer. If you're in that demographic, many of you might be in that demographic, there's this allergy to trauma. I don't have trauma. I'm tough and strong. We, walked 5 miles in the snow with no shoes. We were tough and strong. We're not we don't have trauma, right? And if you're like a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I've sneezed. I have a trauma history and PTSD, right? Kind of depends on what demographic, what cultural time frame you live in around how you carry trauma and what it means over and underused. I see trauma as beyond our human capacity to handle. I ask people, have you ever had an overwhelming life experience? Everybody says yes to that. And they'll even say, no, I don't have a trauma history, but of course I have overwhelming life experience. It's kind of an easier, more palatable way to think about trauma, an overwhelming life experience. And I, Brian, separate what happened to you versus how you perceive it and how you respond to it. Because what happens to you and how you perceive it are vastly different within families. My brother, who also has a trauma history, is an avid hunter, and he'll shoot anything that doesn't shoot him first. I become a damn trauma expert, right? Two similar experiences with very different perceptions and adaptations, what you do with it. I also think about frequency, intensity, and duration when I'm thinking about trauma. I had the pleasure of working with Nadine Burke-Harris recently. She's a Surgeon General, or what, former Surgeon General of California. working on the ACE studies, the number of traumas and the number of problems that they cause in the medical community as a result of that. So frequency, intensity, and duration are important. And look at this list just keeps growing and growing and growing for me. What are your range of traumas? And I'm not going to go through all of them in depth, but I do talk about these in the course. Different types of trauma affect us differently and need to be treated differently. All traumas are not created equal, and they shouldn't be. And each person doesn't experience them the same. So, adding the dimension of spirituality to our work for me is very important because we have certain limitations with what the field of psychotherapy allows. And many trauma survivors will absorb the energy of trauma and absorb the energy of, I'm going to say, misaligned emotion that doesn't belong to them. And so we need to be able to access other ways to release this energy of trauma that doesn't belong to the people that carry it. It's one of the hallmark things for me is trauma is energy that doesn't belong to us and it can be released. I don't care how traumatized you are, how long you've been traumatized. I want people to know release is possible. These are a list of different types of trauma, and my list keeps growing as we get more awareness of what's happening in the world. Resilience as a result of trauma. I just want to talk a little bit about this for a moment because, in fact, let me go back. In fact, the more we move toward trauma, the more we are learning from our difficult moments, the more resilience that gets created within the individual. The more we push away our trauma, the more we tend to recreate and replicate it. And that's kind of what happens. Like it or not, I was one of these people, I used to say, I was on rinse and repeat for many, many years. I'd be in a relationship, it wasn't good. I ended the relationship, I started a new one. It wasn't good in a very different way. I ended that relationship and started again. I was kind of on this rinse and repeat cycle. And it wasn't until I started really dealing with the emotional and physical somatic aspects of trauma that I started gaining a resilience in me that was different than what I had and was born with, because I see resilience as temperament, as what we're born with. Certain people have that thing, that it factor. I often would say, why did I, with my trauma history, go to Harvard when other people with the same trauma history or similar or worse end up on the streets shooting heroin, right? There's this inherent temperament that creates some resilience and as Angela Duckworth tells us, resilience can be cultivated and built. And I believe that healing trauma and going through the process of forgiveness helps create more resilience. These are some of the things I think about when I think about resilience. Can people form a meaningful connection? And folks, when you're listening to this, think about yourself as it relates to this. Like where do you rate on the resilience scale, right? Can you form a meaningful connection? Can you tolerate uncertainty? How comfortable are you with difficult emotions? Are you willing or capable of learning from difficult moments? Can you see or value others outside of yourself? Oh my goodness, folks. If we did this, the world would be a different place. If we collectively had the capacity to see the other person's point of view, we would not be in the global and political divisiveness that we are today.
Frank, are you listening to your clients for these also?
Am I
Can they form
listening? Oh, totally, Brian. When
Mm.
I'm sitting with somebody, I'm assessing their resilience when I'm going through this list. This is a list that I use, right? I was like, I want to see, like, if I'm working with somebody, kind of what our trajectory of therapy is going to be like, because a lot of this, can they acknowledge their own vulnerability? A lot of this speaks to vagal tone. If we want to integrate neuroscience here around resilience, what is your capacity to move in and out? What is your capacity to see your own and see somebody else's? What is your capacity to make something of a difficult moment versus avoid it? So for me, this is kind of an assessment or a rating scale when I'm working with a client and or when I'm thinking about myself in regards to my own history. So yeah, it's a both and for sure. I love the work of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and I want to put this up here because this brings another dimension of resilience. Somebody who's been through just horrific things and made huge impact on the world as a result of his suffering, helping others despite our own suffering. The power of choice is our last human freedom, is what Viktor Frankl says, which I love from him. No matter the situation, are you exercising agency? Super important. And this leads to grit, that you can make things happen. So I want to think about that when we're thinking about forgiveness, in what we have choice over, what we don't have choice over. We're going to talk in a bit about Desmond Tutu and him bringing together groups from apartheid and how they put together victims and perpetrators to have a discussion about harm, those who harmed and those who have been harmed. So any of us, any of our clients who have gone through these difficult, overwhelming experiences, did we exercise agency? Did we feel the power of choice? Super important. I have to share this recent experience that I had with Elizabeth Smart. So she's the woman, for those of you who know, who was, I did a workshop with her in Utah recently, a couple weeks ago. She's the woman who was abducted in her house in Utah at 14 years of age, and she was brutally beaten and raped for 9 months. And, she's somebody who said, I was abused by someone outside of the home, not by someone inside of the home. So she made this distinction around, was I being harmed by someone who was supposed to be a safe object for me versus being harmed by someone who was evil in her mind, not someone who's also supposed to love her. It was a stranger. But what she said was she woke up every single day for 9 months thinking, I will do whatever I need to do today to wake up and be alive tomorrow. And she did this for 9 months. And the level of resilience that that woman had is remarkable. And she has been able to kind of forgive her perpetrators and move on in her life in a way that's truly remarkable. So, this idea of adversity building resilience is an important one. Um, and resilience as a product of forgiveness is something that I want to talk a little bit about here towards the end. Because as you know, the title of this workshop is Forgiveness After Healing Trauma. And that is something that I have come to differentiate, folks. I don't think of, and this is only my view, so you certainly don't have to hold this perspective, but I don't think of forgiveness as a dimension of healing trauma. I think of it as a whole separate issue because there are some people who want to heal and do go through the healing process of healing what happened to you, healing what you're carrying as a result of going through something difficult, and is one dimension of healing. Choosing to forgive is a whole separate issue. So I don't put them together. I don't want to say to anyone out there, if you don't forgive, you haven't done full healing, because I don't believe that. I think healing trauma is releasing the energy that you absorbed based on what happened to you. I see forgiveness is releasing the pain and the anger that you're carrying towards the person or people that harmed you. So for me, those are two very different things. Sometimes people choose to do both. Sometimes people choose to do one or the other. What isn't helpful is forgiving to bypass healing, because that is what a lot of people and culture and TikTok and some religious institutions will tell you forgive first so that you can move on. But that kind of forgiving first is forgiving at the prevention of releasing and healing your trauma. So I really want to put these things together. So let us talk about healing first. Um, Hold on one second. My dog is scratching at the door. I got to let her out or she'll start barking. I'll be right back in 2 seconds. Sorry about that, everyone. I am back. I didn't show you. She sits here and hangs out with me until she gets bored and wants to go outside. So let's talk about healing first. If we look at the healing dimension, right? We're looking at, whoops, sorry. Healing first, we got to think about how wounds develop. And this is not, this is a largely complex PTSD. This is the way I see it. Vulnerability is, do I know what I feel? Can I express that? Do I know what I feel? Can I share it with somebody? Two dimensions of vulnerability. When somebody harms us or reacts to us or does something to us based on our authenticity of expression, and they don't take responsibility for it, we take responsibility for what was done to us. And that's held as distorted beliefs, absorbed emotions, and physical sensations. So we develop wounds when we take on the actions and the impulses of the perpetrator. The way we heal, and look, I do 5-day workshops on how to heal trauma. So we're not going to dive into that here. But just from a neuroscience perspective, I want to share some of the main components of healing. This is the stuff that needs to happen before forgiveness. There needs to be the part that holds the trauma's ability to share what it's holding, not only the story, thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. So that what the trauma that's held needs to be shared and witnessed by someone else. Then a corrective experience needs to happen. We need to get what we never got. It needs to be the opposite of trauma. If I feel unloved, I feel loved. If I feel alone, I feel connection. So we give what we needed as a component of healing, and then release is possible. Okay, then release is possible. So I really want people to go through this process around healing their trauma before we look at the whole cycle of forgiveness. And of course, we know that blame and revenge block healing and block forgiveness. And those are places that are external versus internal. When I need to keep it away, I cannot and prevent healing. Now, again, forgiveness is often suggested prematurely. One of the things that I learned in my own experience is that it's more about the person doing the forgiving than it is about the people being forgiven. And this took me a while to understand this, because some religious traditions, some spiritual traditions, some even in some points within AA, there are ways that people misinterpret. Step 4, for example, go out and ask for forgiveness. That is not what AA teaches, but that is sometimes the way people see it. I'm not a big fan of asking for forgiveness. I'm a big fan of taking responsibility for my actions and allowing the other person to forgive me if they want to. But me taking responsibility for my actions frees me up of what I'm carrying. And then the other person can forgive me or not. I don't like people asking for forgiveness because it's something that we are not owed, but if we take responsibility, we're more likely to receive, right? And forgiveness after releasing trauma has an untethering quality, uh, a breaking the energetic cord between the person who was harmed and the person who did the harming. We can feel, once we forgive, unaffected. Not that we forget or not that we condone, but we're unaffected by the other person and what they did to us. We can hold complexity differently. And what I mean by that is nobody is all good or all bad. As children, when we're abused, we need to make people all good or all bad because that is our capacity at the time when we're young and underdeveloped. But holding the complexity of the woundedness in our perpetrator, as well as the perpetrator within our victimness, right? We all have harmed, we all have been harmed. And forgiveness allows us to hold that complexity with us as well as with those who have harmed us. True acceptance, different than condoning, and you can or not have a new relationship with the perpetrator, which I'll talk about in a minute. And that's a choice. It depends on how they react and respond, if you want them in your life or not. That is totally a choice. It's not a requirement. The freedom that I felt when I was able to forgive my father was the ultimate gift to myself to be able to love someone who harms you or has harmed you is the ultimate freedom for you, that you are no longer carrying the effects of your trauma. If you can rise above their actions and their beliefs and love them back is a power like I've never felt, a freedom that I never felt in my whole life. All right, now here I just want to run through this in closing before we stop and take. I'm so excited. I'm really excited about the Q&A, right? I have to say that. I can't wait to see how people react and respond but I want to go through Desmond Tutu and his daughter's kind of Truth and Reconciliation Commission because I thought this was very powerful. They invited perpetrators of apartheid to tell their truth to the victims and for the victims to share their impact. And, Desmond Tutu says we all have painful experiences. And just as Viktor Frankl says, we all have control over our responses. No, here we go, folks. This may be activating to you, but no act can't be forgiven. Not everybody agrees with this. I do. I'm aligned with Desmond Tutu in this. No person is unworthy of forgiveness. That is also something that I believe. There's this whole culture right now around narcissists as evil and people who are recipients of narcissists as victims. I believe everybody can heal, and I believe everybody deserves forgiveness. And I'm not asking you to feel the same way because I'm not asking you to hold that belief, right? And it's harder for some people than others, and not everybody wants to heal, and not everybody is interested in forgiveness. Do we need to forgive ourselves? This was one of the biggest shocks for me was when I forgave my father. I was so surprised that it freed me up to start forgiving myself for what I had done not only to him, not only to myself, but also to the people in my life. I love apologizing now in a way that I never could in the past because acknowledging both the victim and perpetrator within my father freed me up to acknowledge the ways that I have harmed and I have been harmed. So it was a reciprocal experience for me. I'm going to just go through the four steps of Desmond Tutu's forgive path to forgiveness. And those of you who know about healing trauma see it's very similar and very close. So the forgiveness process is very similar to the healing process, but again, in my view, they need to be differentiated. The person who holds the pain and is interested in forgiving needs to tell their story. Tell it to a close friend, tell it to a therapist, put the words in a box, close the box, hand it off to the friend. There is a way that we tell our story and we release it, right? It's very similar to the witness or sharing. This can be done in imagination. This doesn't only need to be done in person. Identify where it hurts. Naming your hurt allows a vulnerability to show up. This is where grief often shows up. And you do meditations or in real life with somebody, hand on heart, hand on stomach, breathe into the feelings. Notice where in the body you're feeling the pain and the hurt of someone who harmed you. Share it with a friend, validate, and then walk out and leave. I acknowledge my hurt. I can feel my hurt. And then I'm going to shift and change states. Number three, consciously choose to forgive or not. Forgiveness is not a one and done, folks. It doesn't happen and then we're over. It's a choice and it's a practice and it's ongoing. It's cumulative. It happens bits and pieces at a time, and you have to show up to make it happen. It just doesn't happen because you want it to. Bring in positive emotion. Picture the person you want to forgive as a child or a baby and send good feelings towards them. Now, you can't do this if you're still holding pain and anger towards the trauma that they inflicted upon you. Once you're free of that trauma, you are more capable of completing stage three, step three. And then last is releasing and renewing the relationship with them. Okay. This is creating something new. It's the same thing if you're working with couples who have infidelity. You're not going back to the way it was because back to the way it was harmful. It's creating something new. And there's the vulnerability of can they meet you? Are they interested? Have they taken accountability? Have you been able to release the anger and hurt you feel towards them? You can choose to renew a relationship with them, not go back to what it was, or you release them from your life as a choice because they can't meet you where you are with a trusted person. Maybe it's the person who harmed you, maybe it's somebody else. Think about the person you're forgiving. Feel the feelings about the relationship with them. Share it with a friend. What choice feels authentic to you? There's no right or wrong. You haven't succeeded or failed if you choose or not choose to have somebody in your life. And then once again, leave the room. Many of you know this quote, and I really have expanded it over the years because of the work that I've done with forgiveness and trauma healing. Trauma blocks love, trauma blocks connection, trauma blocks our choice to forgive. And it is fact, love, connection, and forgiveness that truly can heal trauma on a multidimensional way. So I think I'm going to stop there, Brian. And I just want to say thank you everyone for listening to this. I'm excited about a Q&A, and I do know that there may be a wide range of feelings around some of the stuff that I said.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Look, we should just take a moment and chew on everything you just went through. I think you have a dozen new ideas running through your head right now about clients you want to work with. And go ahead and drop in chat. What was your biggest takeaway from what Frank just shared? For me, it was Frankel's quote, helping others despite my suffering, no matter the situation, you're exercising an agency. If I said it correctly, maybe you could read some, Frank. People are putting it
Yeah.
in chat. Just your biggest takeaway, a word or two,
Mixing
mixing spirit.
spirituality with therapy, heal first, forgive second. Forgiveness is a process and practice. Um,
Need to
Need
forgive
to forgive
myself.
myself. Forgiveness is ongoing. The components of healing, repair, release, and correct. I love the bit about forgiveness not happening all at once. Um,
Mm,
yeah, no
that's
one is
beautiful.
unworthy of forgiveness. For asking
That's a big one.
forgiveness and taking accountability.
Blame and revenge, block healing. That's really,
Yeah, yeah,
I've sat Frank through a lot of trainings, and there's something different about what you teach. And it's not just information. It's like you're giving us permission to trust something you've been feeling all along, but didn't know how to
yeah.
name it in your practice. Um,
Intuition, Brian, let me just say that.
Please.
We lose intuition gets blocked in trauma. Our intuitive sense gets blocked in trauma. So, re-listening to that inner voice and that inner wisdom is part of the healing process. And yes, I want to give that back to people, not only clients, not only therapists, but the clients.
But wouldn't you also say trauma also makes you more in tune with your intuition? Because that's what I feel
No,
inside.
trauma makes you
No.
more in tune to your protective nature,
Oh, okay.
not your intuition, which is wisdom and truth. People say, "Oh,
Okay.
I knew that was right, but I didn't do it anyways because I needed to protect myself."
Hmm.
The
So
difference.
I want to get onto our course. Like
Yeah.
Frank today just gave you a little taste, a really powerful taste, and I was hard to cut him short. It seemed like Frank had 8 hours of energy to go today. Um, so I know many of you are already thinking, okay, I need more of this. How do I go deeper? So let me tell you about the course and not to press you, but because if this resonates with you, I genuinely believe it could change many practices and impact your life and clients. The program is called New Dimensions of Trauma, Healing, Energy, and Neuroscience and Spirituality. It's a 4 module live training that starts November 14th. And here's what we're going to cover. This is what you'll see when you come to the page. I'm sure Bridget and team will give you a link, but I'll go through the modules with you so you get what you're learning. And Frank, please jump in. There's the
Yeah.
foundation right when you join. Um, Key principles of IFS, how to tap into your own self energy, and the 8 C's, your inherently healing capacity of the 8 C's that many of you that study IFS know about. And then we start November 14th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, all the calls are recorded and transcribed. Anything you want to say about this module, Frank? A deeper dive into self
Yeah,
energy?
it's interesting. This is one of the things. So when I filmed this course, I had a whole different understanding of what self-energy was back then and what it was now. So self-energy is this concept in internal family systems. And I've really expanded my thoughts and views about it since this, because I'm expanding myself way beyond the IFS model of therapy in a very integrative way. And this is where I really have incorporated, Brian, the difference between the self and the soul. And this is
Hmm.
something that is different from IFS. And I'm so excited to talk about this during our live call because I think the soul and the human self endure trauma differently. And this is a new belief system, which I'm excited to share about, different than the traditional views of IFS and self energy.
One of our values at Therapy Wisdom, and we've done 60, 70 courses, is not just to take what the presenter is downloading on you, but also like how do they think about it so that
Yeah,
you're evolving, so that you're not ever
totally.
static, like, oh, I digested A, B, C, D. That's how I'm going,
Yeah,
that's my recipe going forward. Well, maybe you don't have any salt the next time you cook. You adjust.
totally.
Um, Module 2, energy science and healing. We're talking
Yeah,
about energy healing
and
techniques for trauma, so you know what to
this is one
use.
of the things I'll say a little bit about this because I work with a gentleman now named John Amaral, and this is all energy healing. And this is a whole different dimension talking about the energetic chakras, talking about energetic layers within each
Mm,
person, talking about how we work with the energy field in order to heal. And this is a whole exciting new dimension. Again, something we'll talk about more in the live course. I give you the basics around what, energy healing, in addition to emotional healing through the psychotherapeutic worlds. And how do we put those together? How do we really put those together and how to
mm,
help attune to the energy in a very different way than listening to the words?
mm.
It's a whole different feeling of right brain connection when you start incorporating energy into that.
And just so everybody know, these could be very interactive calls. We won't use a webinar format. We'll use meeting. And Frank is dying to talk to you directly. Just know we have this format because we can only hold 500 people in a meeting, and we have over 1,000 people in this call. Module 3, using the client's spiritual resources and psychotherapy, which is the third module.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is totally about expanding their belief system and helping them recognize it and utilize it in a way that may or may not be aligned with yours and may be different from yours. And how do you use yours with your client, your spiritual resources, even when they don't align? Because there's a way to use yours even if they have a very different belief system or have none, if they're agnostic or atheist, to still be able to incorporate your spiritual resources in the work that you do without imposing any belief system on them.
So even if your brother's a hunter, it's okay.
You got it. And how I'm spiritually with him as he's shooting the next animal. Yes.
And then the fourth module is healing trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the piece, with what's happening in social media. I really am going to hold this belief that trauma needs to be healed, not just processed. We need to release the energy that doesn't belong to us. And we'll be talking about integration here, Brian, more and more
Mm,
in the live calls because IFS is one such modality, but I no longer believe it's the one. I believe it's one of the ones. And we're going to talk about incorporating EMDR and sensory motor psychotherapy and somatic experience, a more integrative approach to trauma healing. But
mm.
don't just process it, release it. And how do we use different modalities, including polyvagal theory, interpersonal neurobiology, to really have healing, even though it's not permanent? Release is possible and elevates people to the next energetic level of which they
Mm.
interact in their life.
And our programs aren't complete with like some ultimate bonuses. So I'm just going to do this really quick.
Yep.
We have a conversation between Frank Anderson and Gabor that's really brilliant. Um, and I was just really touched how much Frank appreciated having Gabor willing to do this interview because we're all on the path. A conversation with Elizabeth Cal. Um,
And this will be
eh,
incorporating psychedelics. So that's another really
yeah,
interesting discussion around accessing spirituality through psychedelics. So we'll be talking about that also here.
and one of our favorite people, Richard Strozzi Heckler, founder of Strozzi Institute, and really talks about what Frank had that first chart about how we're shaped by society, our landscape, our trauma, intergenerational. So this is a really rocking interview, um, and many more. So each module is 90 minutes long, interactive Q&A. So you can ask your specific client questions, and you'll get instant access to module 0, the foundation, and 1 as soon as you enroll. Um, some of you might be thinking, I'm not sure I believe in energy spiritual work. And honestly, you don't have to. Frank didn't either when he started. He's a Harvard trained psychiatrist. He was taught that that stuff is just basic nonsense.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about Frank's teaches is how to work with energy in a way that's grounded in neuroscience. It's not woo-woo. It's brain-based. It's just happened to include dimensions of healing we weren't taught in grad school. Or maybe you're thinking, I'm worried about what colleagues will think if I start talking about spirituality, and we totally get that. And I think Frank will address that directly in the course and how to integrate spiritual work in a way that's clinically sound and appropriate. Um, so just to recap what you get, and we'll get to Q&A. It's 4 live 90-minute trainings with Frank. You'll get instant access. All sessions are recorded, so you can review as many times as you want. You'll get all the downloadable slides and materials, live Q&A time with Frank. And I think that's the most, there's some transmission, just like reading your book. We talked about this. It just wasn't the words, like, because we have a personal connection. Like it got into my brain, and my next conversation with my dad was totally different. I wasn't
Mm.
trying to do anything different. I think just hearing your story of transformation with your own dad and seeing pictures, like I think something happens when we're have a
Mhm.
relationship with other
100%.
humans who have some expertise, some experience. Um, so the investment for the full program is 327, and I realize some of you that might not be able to do that right away. So I just got Ian and Laura literally 10 minutes ago create a payment plan of I think it's 137, 3 payments of 327. Um, so I just encourage you, like how many hours you spent with that one client who just you can't seem to move forward, the one you've been seeing for 2 years. Like, could this be the magic trick? And also, um, I love Frank's book so much that we're giving that to everybody um, who signs up.
That is so I'm so heart touched by that, Brian. I'm so grateful that you're willing to kind of do that in this course because the book is was transformational for me and probably one of my most exciting things these days is when people reach out to me just as you did around, oh my goodness, Frank, to be loved touched me. I resonated. I didn't have your exact same story, but I resonated so much and it helped me on my healing journey. That honestly was the whole reason of writing this book was to have people resonate and be touched by it. So the fact that you're offering this in this course is just a huge thank you. I'm full of gratitude for that offering. I just really want to say that.
And it just shows, like, as a practitioner, just showing your vulnerability and exposing yourself. Probably wasn't taught at Harvard to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so uh,
Not at
anyway,
all.
but we're offering that gift to everybody who signs up in the US and Canada. And then if you're overseas, we'll figure out a way to get you at least a Kindle version.
Mhm.
Um, so anyway, we have a whole bunch we got 40 questions.
Okay.
Bridget, can you bring the wonderful Ruth Cohen on board?
Ruth, is this really Ruth?
Hold on, I'm gonna pull her in.
We paid her a lot of money to ask you a really hard question.
Are we going to be able to see Ruth?
I don't think you'll be able to see her, but you'll be able to talk. Actually,
Okay.
hold on.
It looks like a different Ruth Cohen, but we love you still.
Oh,
Ruth
never
Cohen with a
mind.
fluffy dog.
Oh,
Okay.
this.
That's me.
Oh, got it. Oh, it's not the other Ruth Cohen.
Okay,
Okay,
hold on.
got it.
Sorry.
We
That's
still love you.
okay. That's
I
okay.
You hear me? I can't put on video right now, but are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Go for it.
Hi there, Dr. Anderson. I've been following you for as far back as I can remember. I'm actually in one of your other courses in a different platform,
Yeah.
and I am so inspired by your work. I am not a trauma expert, although I do work in trauma. I've been doing I started my trainings actually in child protection and moved over to mental health about 11 years ago in 2014. My question is around working with victim survivors of femicide, filicide, and what has now sort
Yeah.
of taken hold of Canada, the US, as well as parts of the UK and Europe is known as parental alienation, where a protective parent loses care of their child or children because of a very twisted narrative used by the offender. And I'm wondering how one such as myself could work in acts of forgiveness in the therapeutic setting when dealing with bereaved parents in this capacity.
So let me just get clear. Are you talking about parent-child estrangement and helping parents where kids have chosen not to be in contact with the parent, or are you talking about something different?
Something different.
All right.
So I'm talking specifically around moms whose children are murdered. I'm talking about children whose mothers are murdered,
Yeah.
or protective parents, typically the mother who have had their child or children removed forcibly and placed in what's called basically camps, to try to reprogram them so that they have a healthier relationship with usually the father, using very heteronormative terminology. But I
Yes.
was thinking more actually about acts of femicide or filicide. And for
Got it.
me, I'm not sure how authentic or genuine forgiveness would feel in those clinical settings.
Well, it's a great question. And this is why I say, so thank you for the question and the clarification. This is why I say forgiveness is a choice. And I really do believe that. I don't think everybody's required to do forgiveness. You won't fully heal if you don't do forgiveness. And it's one of the reasons why I separate them out into two different categories, because I do believe for some circumstances, people don't want to and shouldn't necessarily forgive. So I very much hold that as an option. And I think it's a very individual. And the other thing, Ruth, I'll say is it's not our decision of whether they should or shouldn't. So you've got to work with your parts around the energy you carry about what happened to this person, because sometimes they're going to want to forgive in a way that you think they shouldn't, or vice versa, right? So it's really important to hold your own belief system at bay and to really allow this person to do what they feel is necessary for themselves. And again, when I'm working with forgiveness, I'm really highlighting what energy somebody is carrying within them and what impact that energy has on their system when I'm assessing whether they want to forgive or not. Because sometimes people say, look, I'm good. I feel at peace. I don't need or want to forgive. That's one dynamic. The other dynamic is I'm carrying this heavy burden in me. I'm not able to live an authentic life because I'm carrying anger or resentment in what was done to me and or my children. And so that is something that I work with somebody around, releasing that energy, right? So again, no right or wrong. And that's why I put up the Desmond Tutu stuff around apartheid, because some people chose to forgive horrific atrocities, genocide, and some people chose not to. And I'm not going to judge, and I'm going to hold space so that each person feels as clear and free of what they went through as possible. So it's very complex. I ask you to watch yourself and your feelings as you're working with such horrific things that are happening in the world, because that's part of what activates us and why we're in this work in the first place. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Frank. Juanita asks, how would you approach working with a client that goes to forgiveness immediately and bypasses the real healing work and is wondering why they're still triggered by someone?
Yeah, I'm actually going to kind of I'll be pretty active. Say, you know what? I'm totally open to you forgiving, but I'm going to ask you to do a favor to me right now. Could we hold off forgiving until after we've healed? So if you want to do it, I am totally fine with that. But I would rather have you forgive after we finish our healing work. And I'm very direct around this. This is the same thing, Brian, when people are interested in suing somebody who's harmed them, or they want to speak to their perpetrator about what the perpetrator did to them, if they want to confront their perpetrator, which is totally fine. I'm always saying, let's heal first. And then you make the choice of whether you want to confront, whether you want to litigate, or whether you want to forgive. So, can we just hold off? In my
Mm,
experience, you may feel very differently pre and post healing. You may feel exactly the same. I'm
Mm,
open to either, but I'm going to ask you, let's release the energy of the trauma first, and then you decide. Because one of the things that surprises victims is once they've released the energy of the trauma, they do see the victim in their perpetrator. And that's what happened to me, which was shocking. My dad, who I hated most of my life, honestly, most of my life, when I did the healing work and then eventually forgiveness, I saw the broken little boy inside for the first time. Like I didn't know that was, I didn't have eyes for that. I didn't have a heart for that. It was only after I released the pain I was carrying that I was able to see his brokenness and
mm,
accept the limitations in this man. He really did do his best based on his limitations. I couldn't see that when I was carrying the trauma.
yeah, my therapist told me a while back his father was kind of a monster to him, but when he died, he realized how tiny he was.
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
like shocking.
Yeah. Exactly.
Louise asked, what steps do you recommend for forgiveness when the perpetrator has died?
Yeah, so that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons I put up the Desmond Tutu, like the Desmond Tutu steps. And by the way, folks, there are many different dimensions or steps and processes of healing. That's just one such. Jack Kornfield has another one. There's a lot of people who have a process of forgiveness, which is separate from healing. But the reason I put Desmond Tutu's up there is because there's a process of forgiving that doesn't necessarily include doing it with the other person, right? And
Mm,
so you can do it through meditation. We know imagination is a very powerful neuroplastic agent, for example. Okay. So we know that you can change the brain and release energy even in your mind. So you can do it with
mm,
a friend. You don't have to do it with a person. If they've passed or transitioned or are no longer in your life, you can still release the energy you carry for them.
mm. Thank you. D.
Mhm.
Lewis asks, how might you support a client who struggles with self-forgiveness and tends to blame themselves for everything that's happened in their career and family life?
Yeah, great question. So the lack of self-forgiveness because of a critic, because of being critical, right? That's internalized perpetrator energy. So when we are critical of ourselves, we have to work with that energy because that, in fact, is the absorbing of perpetrator energy. Everybody has a critic, Brian. We all have a critic. And those critics learn and absorb from being criticized, but they
Mm,
use the energy protectively, right? So we have to differentiate where did you learn how to protect that way? And are you interested in protecting a different way? Because the critic has an intention of protection, even though most people hate and try to get rid of their critics. I'm like, love them up because they're trying to protect, but they learned by the effectiveness of perpetrator energy.
mm. Kind of reminds me of the story that Pema Trojan told, who was a Tibetan nun, lives like a mile away from me now.
Mm,
She got well known for a practice called Tonglen of giving and receiving. It's
yeah.
a 7th century Tibetan Buddhist practice. And somebody asked, well, can I include where you give out compassion to everybody else? And
Yes.
like, and
Yeah.
then somebody shot, can I include myself?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yep.
Lauren asked, can you define forgiveness again? A lot of clients ask this.
For me, forgiveness is more about the person doing the forgiving than it is about the person being forgiven. And it's about releasing the energy that you carry from the person or people who have harmed you. So there's a release process present in forgiveness. That's why it's similar to healing, okay? Because we release the energy of the trauma that we carry.
Mm,
Here we release the energy of the anger and resentment that we hold towards the person, the institution, the people, the town, the family that has harmed us. So that's the way I define forgiveness.
Mark has a really brilliant question. How do you gain forgiveness of a situation trauma versus done by another person, like medical traumas that affect and destroy one's aspect of
Well,
one's life?
yeah, that's why I kind of talked about societies and cultures and institutions. One of the things when we look at systemic trauma, we're looking at bidirectional healing. So if you've been abused by the medical community, by a religious organization, by a town or a country, their healing is bi-directional. And what I mean by that is this: there's the individual releasing what they're carrying, but there's also the institution or the person in power or the country making amends and taking accountability for and making change for what they've done. So oftentimes healing, depending on the situation, is one-sided, right? Where you've had a medical trauma and the organization or the institution doesn't take accountability. That's why we have lawsuits and things like this, right? So there's a limitation, there's a one-sided healing around letting go of what you carry, but there may or may not be accountability from the other person. You can still let go of what you're carrying about it, even if the organization or the individual doesn't take accountability. So we don't need that. This is one of the misconceptions, that we need the perpetrator to take accountability in order to be able to forgive them. That's not necessarily true, because oftentimes that doesn't happen.
So many questions like the nuances here.
Yes,
Taylor
they're
asks,
very nuanced. Yes.
and I think that's the skill set of really diving deeper than,
But it's also holding the complexity, Brian. This is one of the, like, I think why
mm,
people push forgiveness so quickly is because they have difficulty holding the complexity. This is not straightforward and easy. It's very complicated. We have to be able to hold the complexity in order to maneuver in this way.
yeah. And Taylor asks, how would you support individuals who say they have forgiven their perpetrators and firmly believe they are okay because of this, but are still experiencing very obvious, intense pain? Almost like stating they forgive them is a blocked openness of trauma healing.
Well, forgiveness is different than healing. That's the point. If they're still getting triggered and activated, they haven't healed. They may have forgiven, but they haven't healed, right? And I'm not sure if they've forgiven. I don't know. It's a very interesting, um, it's a good question. This is part of the nuance here, and I'm asking myself this for the first time. Can someone forgive without healing? That's a good question, right? Forgiveness is, yeah, I don't feel anything toward them, but I'm still carrying pain about what happened, right? So I guess that's possible. But I feel it's more complete to heal from what you're carrying and then forgive. That's why I differentiate them. So some people can forgive so as not to heal, and that's why they're still carrying their pain. But I do
Hmm.
differentiate them that for those reasons.
And here's a whole other dimension in couples
Yeah.
work. Leah asks, how can I inspire my infidelity repair clients
Yeah.
to decide they can forgive their partner if they get stuck?
That's always, oh my goodness, that like this issue of forgiveness comes up with infidelity all the time. This is a hallmark part. And when I'm working with a couple around infidelity, I have the acute trauma phase first. Not everybody talks about this way, but the first phase of working through an infidelity for me is working on healing the acute trauma, because there is an acute trauma. The person who has been violated in that way is carrying an acute trauma. That has to be dealt with first before we move on to any other situation. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is heal it. It's in the beginning, it's all about the person being betrayed. And they have to feel true remorse and acknowledgement from the person who betrayed. Then, in the second phase, it ends up being about both people. What did I do to contribute to this problem? Did I withdraw? What about my trauma history per, um, contributed to this problem. And I'm asking both the victim and the perpetrator in that situation. That's the second phase of healing. Then the third phase of healing in infidelity is, are we interested in creating a new relationship? Again, don't go back to what it was because it didn't work. Are both parties interested in creating a new relationship after an infidelity? And the only way that's possible, in my experience, is when the person who was betrayed heals from the acute trauma. Both people do work on the trauma history that contributed to the circumstances that then allows them to both really create a new relationship together.
Irene asks, thank you, Frank.
Yep.
My question is, doing these 4 sessions of workshop with Frank, how much is it going to do for my practice when working with trauma? Do I first need to train in IFS, sensory motor, EMDR, and whatnot? I'd like to learn how to heal trauma and how to release the trauma energy. Will this workshop teach me how to do this?
Yes, great. That's a good question. And, I did mention, I think this workshop does kind of focus a little bit more on IFS. And I think there's a intro that gives us an overview of IFS. So this workshop will incorporate a lot of the basics of internal family systems. Is this if I take this course, I'll know how to heal all trauma? No, I don't think that's what it is. It's incorporating spirituality and neuroscience, the neuroscience of energy to the practice of healing trauma. I think we all have different skill sets around healing trauma, and we will certainly expand your repertoire as it relates to incorporating other models of therapy. But there's a lot of coaches out there that aren't necessarily trained in these models that do healing of trauma. So it's, where's your comfort level around healing? And then how do you add or complement the work that you're doing by incorporating spirituality? I don't know there's any course that can automatically teach somebody how to heal trauma. That's a lifelong lesson. But boy, it's been evolving for me, that's for sure. But what I say to people, Brian, is as you're learning a new model, incorporate it in ways that feel comfortable for you, and then always resort back to the other ways you've done things when you feel stuck. Like you have experience and history in being with this, right? So you can always resort back to your old ways as you get stuck with the new ways.
I'm doing something different about studying is take the course, integrate as much as you can, and then listen to it again in 6 months and
Oh,
see what
beautiful.
you hear that you didn't hear. So
Beautiful.
especially like a course like this that has so much nuances.
Yeah,
Um,
it's great. I love
like,
that.
and you get lifetime access
Yeah,
um, to people. It's not a one
that's great.
year.
Nobody learns anything in the first pass. When I do trainings, I have assistants come with me and they're my assistants for 10, 11, 12, 13 times. And every time they're listening, they're not participants, they're assistants. They're learning something new. So I totally agree with that. That's a great offer.
So s- so many beautiful questions. We're going to give them all to Frank to incorporate into the course as much as possible because I think a lot of it
Oh,
is
great.
repeat but subtleties of different directions. So you'll have that, Frank, in prepping for the course, your first talk.
Beautiful.
We got 2 more minutes. Anything closing? I know we cut off your presentation early. I know you had so many more
Oh,
beautiful slides.
yeah, I think. I guess what I'd like to close in, and this is something I mentioned it a little bit, Brian, but this idea of acknowledging shadow. I think this is really important. And this is one of the areas that I think not everybody are open to hearing, especially during our current kind of global and political climates within the country of the United States, but also globally within the world. We're in the midst of this profound polarity, this profound us and them. We're right, they're wrong. We're good, they're bad. We see it everywhere. And one of my belief systems, Brian, is that part of why we're here is because we have a tendency to other our shadow. because it's too painful to see ourselves as both victim and perpetrator. I believe that everyone has harmed and everyone has been harmed. And until we can acknowledge both within ourselves, it and acknowledge both within others, I'm not sure the world is going to be able to heal if we keep othering the darkness in the other side. So I want to close with that. And this is a
Mm,
statement that not everybody's happy to hear because it's easier to stay in the other side as evil because it keeps me good. But I want to say we're all both. And that's for me the true path to healing.
it's something I heard in marriage counseling a long time ago. Do I want to be right or happily married?
Yes.
Happily married works a lot better than being
That's
right.
that's great. That's right.
Well, thank you so much. And thank everyone for giving us your 90 minutes. I hope it was valuable. For those inspired, please do join us. It's going to be an incredible program going towards the end of the year, over the holidays. And we also have an incredible membership site for you to interact with your peers that our person Gemma created for you all. So it's also for you to all interact and ask each other questions and mentor each other and be referral. So thank you all. Thank you, Frank. That was
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Thanks, Bridget.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brian. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And you are free to leave. Martana and Laura and I are going to be here for a few minutes after just to answer any questions you have about the course or registration. And thank you. Just thank you, Frank.
Have a beautiful day.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I'll be glad to stay on too.
Okay, great.
But
Thanks, Brian.
until my propane guy comes. I'm almost out of propane in my new house.
So if you have any questions, just type them in the chat and we'll either answer in the chat or we will uh, unmute and answer any questions you have about the course or registering for the course. Thanks.
You know, I originally met Frank. We were working with IFS, was a client um, for, gosh, I don't know how many years ago, 6, 7 years ago. And then we're trying to think of bonus sections. And I was like, who are your best teachers? Um, so, gosh, this was like 2017, 2018. I don't even remember. So Frank came to Boulder to our studio on neuroscience and IFS. We filmed him 3 or 4 days. It was just an incredible experience.
He's incredible.
Um, and it's just wonderful to really get to know somebody that what they teach inside and outside are the same. And Frank was definitely an example of that.
Yeah.
Um, and you guys would love the book. Like I was crying writing it.
Yeah.
Well, wait, take recording off for that one.
Yeah. We had a couple of
The
questions in
price of the course is $327, and the three payments is 137, 147. Let me check. We literally just did this 20 minutes ago. Um, it's three payments for 137.
great.
Um,
And then the membership site, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit more.
do you want to show them? Do we have
Um,
anything to show?
we might, hold on, let me just pull it up real quick. And then I think I'm going to pull up the membership site.
The three payments should be in the registration part. So what you do is, let me see, you go to enroll now. So it's even starting from the top, enroll now. And when you get all the way down here, add to cart, and I don't see it here. So customer service will reach out. See if it's I don't know if it's not working. Laura, can you check that out and we'll contact you?
Yeah, I'm on it.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Great. And I
The
do,
link for installation options, we're working on that. Apologies. This just literally asked Laura about this, I don't know, half an hour ago. Just we want as many people to join as possible. So if you hold on to this page, it will be there momentarily. Oh,
Perfect.
ignore all that gibberish. Yes, the price is US.
Here's the membership site for the folks who are asking
Bye,
about.
Lauren. Thank you for your question earlier.
So when you sign up for a course, you'll have access to our membership site, which basically gives you all of your courses. Any courses that you're signed up for are going to show up on the left sidebar. And in this case, we have New Dimensions of Trauma Healing, Energy, Neuroscience, and Spirituality with Frank Anderson. And it'll bring you to a welcome page with some frequently asked questions about the course live session dates and times. You're also going to find all of the videos for the course modules, any handouts, the recordings of the live sessions, and any slides that he offers with those. Those are all going to be under the pre-recorded information is going to be under the modules and bonuses, and then under live Zoom sessions, you'll be able to register, just show that you're coming, and then it will also have the handout when it's time and when we get it. And then I just want to double check, Brian. Usually there's a community tab over here, and that's where folks can talk to each other.
Yeah. Well, can you tag Gemma so we get that going?
Yes, I will let Gemma know. But that is the membership site. And so you'll have access, any course you take, you have access to everything, all the materials, all the handouts, all the bonuses, all of the resources in that website. Anything you want to add, Brian?
If you have, Jean just reached out. If you have circumstances where you need some scholarship help, please send an email to support@therapywisdom.com. Is that right?
Yeah, support at therapywisdom.com if you have further questions.
And either Sarah or Martana or Janelle will help you out. Unfortunately, the professional community does not like mention of spirituality, so we decided to do this course anyway. It's always our interest to provide CEs for everybody doing this work, but um, spirituality is kind of a CE killer, but we decided we want to invest anyway. Sorry. But if we get CEs in a decade, we'll give you credit back.
Great.
Thanks, Sue, for your understanding.
Okay, any last questions, please put them in the chat, and we're going to wrap up in just a moment. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Brian, for getting such wonderful speakers, and thank you, Martana and Laura, for all of your assistance today. And it was great. All right, hope to see you in the course.
And I hope there's lots of takeaways for everybody, whether you
Yeah,
join us or not, because I think Frank is somebody who's lived his life and been really impacted by his schooling, his therapy, his teaching, and continues to evolve. This is much different than what we recorded, I don't know, it was a year or two ago. So just keep evolving, and we're here to support you.
great. Bye, everybody. Thank you.